session in English, and it's a pleasure to be in Sevilla, a beautiful city, and the pavilion of navigation, and next to the Guadalquivir makes me think of a Portuguese entrepreneur that many years ago ended up being funded by the Spanish crown and started a circumnavigation from Magallanes or Hernando Magallanes or Magellan. So it's a good setup for this conversation. And we'll go at it right away. Let's make this a conversation as well between the five of us. How is the VC sector in Iberia? And I definitely like to start with Laura or Aquilino.
Movement first?
Yeah, or if you will.
So thank you for the invitation.
Maybe Laura, you do like a one minute
intro. Okay. My name is González-Estéfani. I'm originally from Madrid, but I've been living in the US for the last 16 years between San Francisco and Miami, like a girl. I am an accident in the venture capital world. I was a founder myself in the 2000s, and I failed miserably. When you had success, I had the biggest blow up, and then I joined a few tech companies, and I decided to move into the dark side and create my own venture, which is TheVentureCity, which is an American fund, but we are heavy investors in Spain. So that's about me, mother of three little people. One of them studying here in Spain, in Madrid. Anyway, so I think that the situation of the venture capital world in Spain is unknown, meaning that there's tremendous talent, amazing entrepreneurs everywhere, but not enough capital to invest on them. I think that these guys that have been around, especially you, for a very long time, you're the pioneer of the venture capital industry, and thanks to your good performance, it's growing, but it should grow a lot faster than what it is growing. If you compare the situation in Spain with other countries all over the world versus the talent available, it's really sad that at the end our best brains have to find the capital outside. Now I think that with the newest funds, there's more capital available here, but still, venture capital. It's not, in the United States is capital emprendimiento, and here is capital riesgo. So you also name it in a way that implies watch out, right? So it's really sad to see that after so many years, it's not growing as fast as it needs, because it's giving the performance, both from the founder's perspective and of course from the investor's perspective. So that's my point. This is why for us, coming from the American soil, it's so interesting, because you find really amazing opportunities that no one else is tackling, or you guys are tackling, but you need to share because you can take it all, So that's how we're seeing unknown.
Tell us a little bit about Kibo Ventures. I know you have investments in Portugal, in Whole 19, and Define Proud now, Define AI, but tell us a bit more about the fund.
Hola todos. Hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I think this is my third year here in Sevilla, a city I really love and like. And I co-founded Kibo Ventures in 2012, which Kibo has been one of the new breed investors in the venture capital scene in both Portugal and Spain. And we're investing out of our fourth fund, invested in 76 companies, exited 20 plus, all to American corporations, one Indian. So I think that already rings a bell on one of the things that we're lacking, which are exits and local corporations buying our companies. And we invest in early stage. On the topic on Iberian capital, I think since the very early days, I used to be a founder, building an Amazon-like business many years ago, and we started LATAM and Spain and Portugal as a single entity. And I think the two countries have been always been together, and ever since we started, we had an eye put in Portugal. We have two investments in Portugal, We had an operating partner in Portugal where we go quite often. And I have co-invested. I haven't co-invested with Pedro, but I've invested with Stephan Moraes in a couple of deals. So I think there has been a change. Before, the Spanish people would go invest in Portugal, as at the early days, Portugal was a heavy producer of unicorns and great companies. And now lately, I think, I don't know if you agree, but it's the Portuguese or taking over Spain, no? So it's the flow has changed. And in terms of the status of the business, I think both Portuguese funds and Spanish funds lack size, and Laura was very on top of that point. I think we need bigger funds, and we have been in a way unlucky, because when all our funds were maturing, the 21-22 crisis came, and we were not able to divest many of the good companies that we still have in the portfolio, no? And I think that would have been, because all the funds, most of the money has been started in the deployment in 12, 13, 14, so they were maturing in 21, 22, 23, and that has not happened, no? And we've had a very huge lack of exits in our market, and I think that's changing, no? I'm very optimistic about what remains for 25 and 26, but we lack exits, and we lack local exits from local corporations, and in a way we lack LP support to funds. Both in Portugal and Spain, I think we have a huge support from public entities, and we need to match that support with private LPs. And private LPs will only come to the assets with these returns, no? So I think that's the exit side of the business is what's kind of the piedra angular, no? the keystone of the business, and that's where we need to work more, no? That's where we are very actively looking forward.
Maybe we'll get back to you to see the high and the positive, the things that you're seeing that are also relevant and helping propel the industry. I'll go to Pedro and now, and just to understand a little bit. I know you guys are also consolidating your presence in Spain. Many VCs now present themselves as Iberian. How is Armilar looking at this and to the Iberian market?
Right, thanks. So I'm Pedro. I'm one of the partners in Armilar. Armilar is a fund based in Lisbon. We've been around for 25 years, which for European VC is quite a bit. I've been with the firm for 16, which is also, it just means I'm old. And as you can imagine, being there 25 years ago, there was not a lot of investment opportunities around. So by design, we were investing internationally. We invested a lot into the US in the first decade, and now mostly centers in Europe. And as Ricardo was saying, also being much more present in Spain than we were in the past. And this because, in going to your question, right now Iberia is seen as a region in the investment world. And even the LPs, the investors in our funds, the large institutional international investors would not understand if we didn't even assume that it is a region. But it is a relatively recent phenomenon. And if we go back 10 years, cross-border investments were relatively rare, and there was not many investments from Spanish VCs in Portugal, Portuguese VCs in Spain, and the two markets were very much close. They came from different origins in terms of the type of entrepreneurship. And nowadays, it has become a lot more common. And it started, as Aquilino said, at a certain point in time, there were great companies coming out of Portugal. Spain has been much more capitalized in venture capital, even though by international or US standards is still low, as Laura pointed out. But comparatively to Portugal, much better. Portugal remains relatively undercapitalized, where venture capital remains scarce. And so, at a certain point in time, Spanish VCs started paying more attention to what was going on in Portugal, because there were actually good companies coming out of there. And the reverse also started happening more and more. And nowadays, even though these two ecosystems started at different points in the spectrum of entrepreneurship, nowadays it's very much sort of a common fabric. And like you pointed out, we ourselves In our most recent fund, also funds for that we're just launching, we have an allocation. Well, we have one of the investors from the Spanish institutional investor, which means that we have a given allocation for Spain, and necessarily going to be much more present on the ground than we have in the past. But it's relatively recent, and if you count today the number of cross-border investments, there's already a few, but there's not hundreds, and so that's starting to happen more and more, and I think we'll see that a lot more in the foreseeable future.
We'll talk about those opportunities as well, in particular also with co-investing. Stephan, the fund is well seasoned as well on both sides of the border. How do you see the Iberian VC market right now, and what's your stance?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here in Sevilla. It's a wonderful city. I remember coming down here when it was the Expo in '92, and I was kind of a small boy. And it's really, I was flying last night, and it's just so close, right? It's like going from Lisbon to Porto, Lisbon to Faro, Lisbon to Sevilla. It's the same, right? We're in the same region of Iberia, and we've invested in, I think, 53 companies in the last few years. Those companies, we're in our 5th fund. We have 5 funds, and those companies altogether have raised more than 2.5 billion. Several of them are now unicorns. We've invested in some of them early stage, some of them later stage. We were lucky to have invested in Fever. That was before Indico when I was at Caixa, so we ended up investing in one of the Spanish unicorns and in most of the Portuguese unicorns. And I think the way we have looked at the market, as Aquilino said at the beginning, like in the last 10 years or 15 years, Portugal first produced several unicorns, including one founded by my partner Cristina Fonseca, which was Talkdesk, and we've invested in many others, almost all the other ones. But there were already at the time, 10 years ago, some nice exits in Spain. Local exits, a few dozens of millions and hundreds of millions that didn't exist in Portugal. So Portugal was producing huge global companies, just a few, but global, going to the United States immediately because the market is so small that the Portuguese companies need to go global from day one, and they jump to the US, and the level of English is very high in Portugal. So people go global from day one, and we were seeing the companies in Spain grow in Spain and then going to Latin America, which is fine, but the truth is the big market for software is the United States of America. That's why Laura is there. That's why M&A is there. That's why IPOs are there. One of our companies, one of the unicorns that ended up reaching a $22 billion valuation was Farfetch. It did an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. It was later sold for 1 year to a South Korean conglomerate, and it didn't go well. But for many years, it was a huge success story. What we're seeing right now in Portugal is that as the economy grew and you have more big companies setting up offices in Portugal, people have nice jobs. So on one hand, it's kind of like, now I have a nice job, why should I do a startup? So there's a bit of an issue there, there's a bit of a change. And in Spain, for the contrary, we're seeing more and more international funds piling into large rounds. And of course, it's a country that is 5 times the size of Portugal. And so the level and depth of opportunity is much, much bigger. And we're also seeing the Spanish entrepreneurs starting to really want to go global and dominate the global category. We have a few companies in Spain, Fossa, for example, which is a software and satellite company. Yesterday, one of our companies in Barcelona, Workfully, announced a 4 million seed round, a company that we've backed for a few years. And so we see huge opportunity in Spain. We think that at least 1/3 of our capital of the existing fund and the future fund that we're already preparing, at least 1/3 to 40% will be deployed in Spain. So I think the opportunity now, honestly, I'm not going to say it's not Portugal, but I think Spain has a huge opportunity to create global champions.
Yeah, one thing, maybe, when we say in Spain, we are not saying that so we believe in from Spain to the world. 5 years ago, before COVID, most of the American funds would require the best talent in Portugal and Spain to move to the US. it's not required anymore. You can stay here, you can grow your company here, you can have your engineering team here. Of course, you have to go to where your investors are and visit San Francisco or New York or whatever. But you don't have to move anymore, which is even more extraordinary for both.
I think one of the things that you still have to do probably, and it's a learning lesson that we've solved in a decade, the sales and marketing,
Yeah.
if they can be in the US, that's great. Because honestly, the Americans buy from Americans. They're not going to buy from, people with funny accents. So it is important. I think tech teams are here for sure, Portugal, Spain, wherever. But sales and marketing, and sometimes part of the leadership needs to be there because they need to feel it's an American thing, particularly nowadays, right? They need to think.
Well, there's a lot of Americans that want to move to
That's also
Spain.
true.
So there's a lot of sales and marketing people from
That's
the
also
US
true.
that are moving to
But yeah.
Spain. So there's a very interesting effect
Yeah.
happening.
You know, it's a model that I think has worked for us a lot. I mean, having because there's lots of talent in Spain, technical talent, and the cost of talent is fairly low if you compare that to the US.
Yeah.
And the employee loyalty,
It's
I
hard.
think, is pretty good. And there was a discussion previously on how, with Antonio Catalan, on how employees should have a chunk of the company, and something that I fully agree. And the employee loyalty in Spain and Portugal is huge, even without that. No, but now stock options are starting to be appreciated, something that was not the case even 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Taxation was a mess, and now, so you can have a very robust team in Spain while having your sales and marketing in the US. No, in Kibo, that's our model. 85% of revenue for companies are outside of Spain, and of that 85%, I would say more than half are in the US. And I'm a super big believer in attacking the US from Europe, and I'm less believer on Latin, for example. I personally, I think that Latin is less developed, so it takes more time to sell things. And if you sell things in Latin, the price point is lower. So I'd rather go to the US where they pay more and they buy more. And so that's a model that I think it works, but you need to find world-class teams, because if you have that model, you really need to engage with teams that are able to compete globally, not just in Spain, no, as it was the case, as I think you mentioned before, no, because Portugal has always been looking outside, similar to Israel. There's no local market, so you need to go outward. Spain is like kind of in the middle, no? It's good enough to have a good enough company, but it's small enough so you don't have a huge company, no? And we are in the business of finding huge companies, no? And the only way to do that is to go to big markets. So I think that's a great model.
If I may, I just wanted to underline the point that Laura made, that stigma about where the company actually is has become really relevant. I mean, since we've been around for 20-something years, and we started investing in the US, so we have this, our sort of network of close friends and investors, co-investors from the US firms. And because we're from Portugal, we always made it a point for a mission to bring US investors into Portuguese companies. In the beginning, it was impossible. They couldn't even place Portugal on a map.
Yeah.
No way. Then it went through a phase of, okay, well, interesting little company that you have there. Why don't they move to New York or San Francisco, maybe London, so that I could invest in them? And then little by little, so we brought in Oak, that we had co-invested with in a company that was sold to Google, as investors into Feedzai, which later became one of the unicorns in Portugal. Little by little, then all of a sudden you wake up one day and there's Goldman Sachs and KKR investing in OutSystems, another of our portfolio companies that's become quite big. Then that must mean for every other international investor, it's okay to invest in Portugal. And then COVID happens. And after COVID, it doesn't really matter. You can be anywhere, and remote work has become the norm, and people just don't really, give too much weight to where the company is actually located or founded, and investors just invest.
And like Laura said, many of them came here, right? So
Yes, they're all coming here. You can see it in the real estate.
yeah, Portugal and
Market.
Spain, it used to be an unknown quantity, even it has tourists. Now the Americans are all over, so they're like, oh, this is actually a real country.
And by the way, Spain was super fashionable in the US in the 60s with the hippie movement.
Yeah.
And then for a while, in the Westerns, and then for a while it faded away, and now it's fashionable again.
So we do have like companies like Sword Health, has been building a Portuguese unicorn, been building out of Portugal to the world. Founders still very much there. Revolut has their tech team in Porto as well, Cloudflare in Lisbon. So there's plenty of examples, I'm sure, in both sides of the border. Let's talk opportunities. What are you looking at right now? At the Iberian level, where do you see traction? Where do you see more interest? And in particular, would you see cross-border or something? Are you seeing something interesting in Portugal? I know you invested in Tony Cap as well with
Yes,
Armilar,
together.
Daniela, and what other opportunities are you seeing?
Okay, so the opportunity is huge right now. I think it's the best moment ever. We've been in this space for over 20 years, since before the dot-com bubble, and this is much, much bigger. I think that with the new technologies, I'm not going to mention the two letters, AI thing, is going to revolutionize everything as we think of it. AI has been around for over 50 years, but finally we can all use it in many ways. So as an investor right now, this is the best moment for me to really think in companies. And as a founder, I don't know how many founders are here in the audience. How many founders? Those are not very many. Where are them? Okay. This is the best moment ever.
These are the smart founders.
These are the smart founders. You can build something truly amazing. You don't need venture capital as much anymore, because it's faster, it's easier, you can get it to market very, very fast, right? So the moment is the best. Europe has a comeback. So we are launching our first fund in Europe. We have 7 vehicles, and this one's going to be European, because we believe that Europe has a comeback, a big one, in every way, in bioscience, in industrial, in all those boring industries that have not been very fun in the last 10 years. They're coming back right now. So I think that both anything about energy, anything about processing and industrial kind of like segments, anything in science-led, anything that goes with, we've seen a couple of companies, algae, that are working seaweed and stuff like that. There's a lot in the food technology space. I think there's a lot of, very, very interesting things to look at that I wouldn't be just looking into one space. Logistics, for example, is a huge disruption. Aviation industry, huge disruption happening all over the place. So I think that, as always, the best brains have always been born and breathed in European soil, and we just need to give them now the means to take their companies to where they want and to expand into other markets all over the place. But I think that the opportunity is bigger than ever, and the funds finally are happening. I don't think we have a 1 billion. We have 1 billion fund in Iberia, no? Not even.
But we need first a 500 million.
Yeah, I know. But it's funny that with the opportunity and the potential, there's not billion-dollar funds yet.
Guys, any other?
I mean, I can give a little bit of an insight on what we're looking for. I'm not going to focus on areas. I mean, the initial comment would be, it is much harder to differentiate right now. Yes, it's the best time in the world to be a founder and an entrepreneur, but it's obviously for you to stand out globally, because you have to stand out globally. It is not the same as 20 years ago doing a mobile app, or 15 years ago doing a SaaS or cloud solution. It is not the same. So we need to sort of step up the type of things we do. So it's not only about having the team with an incredible multidisciplinary leadership, execution capacity, and so on. What we really look for are teams that are tackling really, really difficult problems. And those are the teams that have access to clients, sort of trying to solve problems for those types of clients which are really difficult. One of the things that I think sometimes is challenging here, because the corporates sometimes in Europe are not as demanding in terms of new solutions, is that the European startups, they're not exposed to really tough clients. which means they're not exposed to really tough competition. So what we look for are teams that are exposed to solving really difficult stuff for big clients or lots of small clients. And that's why I think when you see the rounds that are happening, you have bigger rounds in less companies. So the VCs like us that only invest in 1% of the companies we see are now going down even more to investing in 0.5%, putting more capital to work. We have bigger funds and so on, but even harder to get the capital. And when you get it, you get much more. So it's kind of a winner takes all, but you need to be solving really difficult problems.
Just to give a different angle on in terms of industries we like or we think that have a good ground to build global companies. I think in industry, and Laura mentioned industry, I love industrial applications because we have industry, we have factories, and these factories are the same as they used to be 20, 25 years ago. And now we are looking for things that can automate, that can bring intelligence to those factories. We've recently done a company I really like, which is called Tech Robotics, that we bring intelligence to dumb robots that just move things. So you can prompt the robot and say, okay, take big boxes or take small boxes, and we bring intelligence to those things. No? And it has huge applications in logistics, which is an industry I also love because it's happening every single day. So if you can improve the way you do logistics, then that has huge value for everyone across the value chain. But in industrial robotics, I think it's a very large category that is very old, and we can bring and solve those large problems that Stephan was referring to. The food industry also is an industry that has been somewhat left aside, and there are many things that we can do in terms of hygiene, processing, distribution, so on and so forth. And then obviously everything that relates with automation, AI, agentic AI, so on and so forth, which seems to be the name of the day, but I think that we need to find relevant use cases. You know? In our market, it's hard for us to find the next LLM or the next infrastructure company. I don't think we have the capital or the knowledge, or we are not in the right location. But having said that, there are huge opportunities in finding the right use cases, no? And that's what really where we are spending time is working with founders to find those use cases that are significant in size, that are difficult to tackle, and where we can have an advantage, no? And that's where we spend most of our time, no? Working, finding those use cases for identity.
Maybe we should say where we are not looking. No, for example, consumer. We're not looking into anything consumer, anything that's marketing
Too expensive.
dependent. It's very expensive, it's very inefficient, not for us. We're not looking into, I don't know, a service-oriented kind of like companies. You know, there's a lot of founders, we were talking to a few founders on the other side, and they don't get the product piece versus, which is a scalable, it's a service.
I have a view on that. On the AI thing, we've all have invested heavily in SaaS, in software as a service, but that's just a part of the expenses of a corporation. So they pay you, I don't know, 1,000 per month or 2,000 per month. But now I'm interested in turning the words around, no? And instead of software as a service as a software. Mm-hmm. And then you suddenly become the full industry, like lawyers. You can, instead of selling something to lawyers, then you can become a law firm, which is automated. Administradores de fincas, service management companies, they are heavily labor intensive, but you can turn that into an automated software. Gestorías, that's again a 25-year-old or 50-year-old type of company that has never changed. So AI can really bring things to this, and then you can capture not only the 2,000 euros per month, but you can capture the full thing, no? And that's what for me is mind-boggling, no? Because then you can fight with and build companies that fight against the established corporations, and I think that's
Automation is a big,
Yeah, if I may add, I won't talk about specific industries. We're generalist investors, so it's we invest in any type of industries, and that's what's happening. Is very good news for generalist investors in the sense that, of course, AI has blown up what you can do in any industry applying AI, and by design, if we're venture capitalists, we're optimists, so there's lots of opportunity always ahead, at least in our heads. And I think the AI term will, the term AI company will not be used anymore very shortly. It's like
Next year,
talking about a cloud
Everything's
company 10 years ago or internet company 20 years ago. It doesn't make sense anymore to use those terms, and the same thing will happen to AI. Every company is going to use AI. So it'll go down to, okay, what Stephan said, what is the problem that's being tackled, but especially how the use of AI can actually expand the problem that is being solved. If it's, I don't know, if we're talking a very common use case, let's use AI for call center service. Yeah, that's fine. That's an easy problem to solve. But are we augmenting what a call center operator can do? Because he's directly integrated and has access to all these models, can that be directly into products or to marketing? That expansion is very interesting in any type of use case and industry that we look at. And also just, as a practical hint into what we take care of when we look at companies approaching us as with an AI proposition is everybody's experimenting. Every company, every corporate has a budget to experiment with AI. So it has become critical for us to understand, okay, well, you're getting, you're an AI company, you're 1 year old, you're already getting, a fair amount of revenue, but where does that revenue come from? Which budget does it come from? Does it come from an experimentation budget? Well, okay, that's fragile. No, does it actually come from a proper industry budget that's allocated to solve a problem? That's the difference. That's more interesting.
We've run out of time. We are in Andalusia. I just wanted to 1 minute. Companies, founders that you're seeing in the region that are really moving the needle. Good examples so that the audience knows, and we'll leave it there.
Shout out to the University of Granada. It's one of the best universities in the world for AI, just so you guys know, and it's right around the corner. I think that it's something that people should know. We have a company in the cybersecurity space with the team in Granada, between San Francisco and Granada. Serial entrepreneurs, one of the biggest exits in Spain, was their first company, Alien Vault. Extraordinary team, fun, clients all over the world. It's called Constellar Intelligence. Of course, the company has had its ups and downs, like every other company, tech or non-tech, but very fan of the team and lots of learnings from them, and very inspirational for all the founders and all the investors here. So from Granada to the world.
Guys, we were out of time. Thank you so much, Laura, Aquilino, Pedro, Stephan, for being here. These guys, these investors will be in the venue during the day. So
No time for questions. 1 or 2 questions.
I think we're totally out of time. But thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to see you soon. All right, cheers. Yeah.